Hello everyone, Gordon Crits here, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving back into our ongoing breakdown of the boss battles I've faced in the Pbirdman mod for Final Fantasy X. In this episode we are covering the storyline bosses from Wendigo all the way through Evrae Altana. Expect a few surprises along the way, so sit back, relax and enjoy the ride. This is the fourth video in the series, so if you haven't seen the earlier episodes, I recommend checking those out. I might be referencing them occasionally and they'll help you stay up to speed. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, ring the bell so you won't miss what's coming next. If you're new to the Pbirdman mod, here's a quick rundown. It is a custom version of Final Fantasy X designed for the PS2 emulators. And it was created by Peter Bird, or aka Pbirdman, and the mod revamps enemy behavior, attack patterns, stats, and even sphere grid, progression and layouts. And this makes the game far more strategic and challenging. I am currently playing on the 2.6F version, so everything I discuss is based on that build. This video contains detailed insights into how these bosses have been altered. If you've already faced them, this might give you a deeper understanding of their mechanics, and if you're stuck on a particular fight in this mod, hopefully this will help you find your footing. As always, I'll be sharing my personal experience, how the battles have been reimagined, the strategies I used, and the standout challenges during every boss fight. I'll also break down each boss stats and how they differ from the original game. If you want to see me actually fight these bosses, I've put the commentary playthrough playlists in the description along with any other relevant resources I will mention. And safe to say that there will be huge spoilers ahead, both for the Pbirdman mod but also in general for Final Fantasy X. Now I'll be giving each boss a star rating from 1 to 5 based purely on their difficulty. This isn't a critique of the mod itself, it's just my take on how tough the fights felt. Now honestly, Pbirdman has done an incredible job with this mod and he deserves full credit for the work he's put into it. So here's a quick rundown of the star rating. I will give 1 star if the fight was relatively easy or almost the same as the vanilla game. I will give 2 stars if the fight was just a little bit harder but still doable with the correct strategy or rearranging my strategy. 3 stars is when the fight was noticeably harder, a noticeable increase in difficulty, and it became a seriously strategic fight. 4 stars will be for the much more significant increases in difficulty for a specific boss fight, and I would have had at least a couple of game overs. And 5 stars is just a nightmare boss fight. I wanted to quit the mod or throw my controller away, quit gaming forever, and I will have had multiple game overs. Now, enough talk for now, let's get started with the first boss fight of this episode. Okay, let's start off with Wendigo. You encounter this boss after escaping Makalania Temple, where the Guado ambush you on the frozen lake with Wendigo. He's accompanied by 2 Guado henchmen. Now, Wendigo has some interesting stats compared to the original game. He has a tiny bit more of HP, also a lot more strength and magical abilities, but also his defense and magic defense have been increased significantly to make him take a lot less physical and magical damage. He's a little bit quicker and he will also crit significantly more in this mod. Also his accuracy, that's what's most significant here, has been increased from 0 to 120. So actually technically Wendigo will almost always hit you. Now what's also in the mod is that his Zanmato level is now 4. I'm not sure why that's in there, but just so you know that it is. When checking his resistances, it does stand out that he is now 80% resistant to threaten, but also 75% resistant to provoke. So those little tricks will work far less than in the original game. Also his dark and silence resistance have increased from 20 to 50%. He is also 50% resistant to berserk now, and that's mostly in the mechanics of the fight itself, but we'll see that later. And also he has he's warded against all Aeon attacks, so that takes half damage, but also gravity attacks like Demi will be halved in damage. So when we look at his immunities, I do want to I'm going to start bringing in like what they're already immune and resistant to in the original game. Like for example in the original game, I mean, he was already immune to poison, petrification and slow. So those were already 3 statuses that he was immune to. But of course there have been some statuses added to this list. He will now be immune to sleep, which previously was just a 20% resistance. He's also now immune to all the breaks. So in the original game he had 0 resistance. Now he is completely immune to all the breaks. He's also immune to doom. He will absorb all items. So from a grenade or something else that Riku throws, he will heal from them. He's also proof against holy magic, but you shouldn't have the holy ability at this point, I think. And he is also immune to any percentage-based damage. So I think that's from items like a Shadow Gem or the Demi spell. But anything that takes a percentage of damage from Wendigo, he will just be completely immune to it. And once again, he's immune to Sensor and Scan, like all bosses are. Now, quickly looking at the henchmen here, we see that their stats have been bumped a little bit. We see the magic stat being increased a little from 14 to 19, but also their luck stat has increased. Now they're also more resistant to provoke, and they have a little bit more resistance to poison. However, the damage they take from poison is significantly lower compared to what's in the original game. And they're also immune to petrification, because we all want to use the breath attack from Kimahri to petrify them, but they're immune now, and they're also immune to Sensor and Scan. However, compared to the Seymour fight, you can target them, luckily. Okay, now let's check out Wendigo's attacks. So he has 2 different sets of attacks, one when he's above 50% HP, and a set of attacks when he's below 50% HP. When he's still at full health, up until half his health, he will do 2 attacks. He either does the senseless attack, or he either does a regular attack. So the senseless attack happens 66% of the time, so 2 out of 3 times, and the regular one 1 out of 3 times. He will use that attack. Now the senseless attack, I will break it down a little bit for you, what it exactly does. It is actually a highly accurate and very powerful attack, so it almost will not miss. I've seen it hit through darkness, so it will almost always hit you. And it also carries all these statuses. It could carry Confusion, Provoke, Berserk, Zombie, and potential Shatter, if that's relevant. Now, so it has different percentages of actually hitting you, but all these statuses are nicely packaged in this senseless attack from Wendigo, so watch out for that. Now, when he's below 50%, he becomes a little bit more dangerous. Now, he will do, from then on, physical and magical counters. So he will counter all of your attacks. Now, this is different from the original game, where he goes into this like stance at half HP. But this is what definitely happens when he's below the 50% mark. Then his attacks are also a little different. He will, now 2 out of 3 times, he will do a lag attack instead of the senseless attack, and the other 1 out of 3 he does the regular attack. Now the lag attack, again, very accurate, very powerful, and it can definitely crit. And it carries a 75% of slow for 5 turns, so that's very crippling. It can have a delay effect, a weak delay effect, and it has a 30% chance of inflicting zombie on your character. Something that Wendigo also does, but I'm not sure when it happens, it might happen when he's on low HP, is he follows the specific cycle of moves. So you know, when he starts with 1, then the other moves will happen sequentially, but I'm not sure when that happens. It might be HP related, but I'm not really sure. But the move that he does is he starts with Cura, so he will heal himself, and then you know the cycle will start. So after the Cura, his next turn, he will do nothing. He will do nothing. So that's very surprising. And then the third move that he will do is Dispel. So that's like a series of 3 moves that he does, but I'm not sure when it happens. So if you know, let me know. But it's either this series of 3 moves or he does the lag attack or the regular attack. So Wendigo also carries status drops, of course. So whenever he counters you and you have Protect on, your amount of turns you have Protect will be reduced by 2. But if he does like a regular attack, so not the Senseless or the lag attack, I think it's just if he does the regular attack, your amount of turns with Protect will be reduced by 3. Now, quickly looking at the moves from the Guado henchmen, you will see that they will constantly try to cast Berserk on him. So the Berserk will have a 50% chance of hitting, because we saw that it has he has 50% resistance to Berserk. So they will do that constantly. However, when they are KO'd and you do want to knock them out because you don't want that Berserk on Wendigo, so when you take out the Guado, then again something happens. So in the original game they casted Protect and Shell, I think, but I'm not sure, but I think that's what they did. However, now they will do something else. One does, it will say Pitcher, so when one dies he will do Pitcher, and that means that Wendigo will have 3 times aim. And when the second one dies, he will do Dancer. The move is called Dancer, but that means Wendigo will get 3 times Reflex on him. So you need to be able to cope with these 3 buffs as long as Wendigo is alive, because they are not dispellable. So in short, the aim means that he will have 30% more chance of landing an attack, and the reflex will mean that he will have a 30% higher chance of evading an attack. Now, as for my strategy, I quickly found out that I needed to get rid of the 2 Guado henchmen as soon as possible. You can try to let them stay, but they will berserk him constantly, and if he's berserked, they will do elemental spells against you, so you want to get rid of them ASAP. They're too much of a nuisance, and we will try to handle Wendigo in Pitcher and Dancer stance with the aim and the reflexes. They will also auto potion Wendigo eventually, so they need to go. Now you want to wear some armor that gives you an HP boost, just so that you can at least try to survive Wendigo's attacks. The Rune Veil might also help to just get that extra bump in resisting the statuses that go with the lag and the senseless attack. If you have Berserk or Confuse resistance, definitely carry it, because that's going to be very, very helpful. Now you need Protect to survive his hits. Especially Lulu needs Protect, because she's the one that's gonna do the most damage to Wendigo. Oren might survive a hit with high enough HP. Maybe you could use him to guard also in the fight, but maybe just Oren could survive without the Protect. Now, if you get zombied, confused, or provoked, use Asuna or use a remedy. I know remedies are rare now, but either just get rid of those statuses as soon as possible. Also, haste when you can. Lulu is gonna need to do damage, so haste her so she can get her spells in as fast and as frequent as possible. You also might think about hasting Yuna for healing, so she can get enough healing spells in, but watch out for those one-hit KOs from Wendigo, because they could happen, especially because his attacks can crit quite frequently. On the other hand, using Darkness might seem logical, but in this case I found it actually quite useless, because his accuracy is so ridiculously high, probably because of the aim and also the way that his attacks have a very high accuracy. So Waka is actually quite useless in this fight. Actually, a lot of statuses don't work, so I actually did not bother to try to inflict any statuses on him. However, he is susceptible to delay, so keep that in mind. Now, doing damage should be preferably done with Lulu. Maybe add him some focuses to just boost that magical damage up. Just watch out for when Wendigo counters. Make sure Lulu has Protect at all times, because she will either die from a one-hit KO. I've also felt that physical attacks are actually useless because of his high evasion with the reflex, but in theory it's possible. And when he gets below 50% and he does that lag attack, it's actually not that bad. I felt that it wasn't that big of a deal. The delay wasn't that big of a deal, and Also, the slow did not hit that often, and you could also solve that slow by casting haste. Now, what I actually in the end found the most helpful is when he does his sequential attacks of Cura, followed by nothing, followed by a dispel. This cycle is actually the key to winning this fight, because this gives you 3 kind of free turns where you can either do damage, heal yourself, or buff yourself. And don't forget to unleash your overdrives whenever you can. Despite his high resistance, I was able to threaten him, but that was maybe just a lucky shot, but you might try it as well. Now, the challenges in this fight are actually the high damage output from Wendigo. It is very, very painful. Definitely if he's berserked, you are going to get one-shotted, I think even with Protect. Now, you need to overcome that by casting Protect on yourself and getting rid of that berserk if he has it. Now, the fight also becomes very dangerous if one or two of your characters are KO'd. So he can one-shot anyone, and if he has like back-to-back turns, that can quickly go south and you'll get a game over before you know it. So take it easy when someone dies. Try to revive them as fast as possible, because it will be over soon. Now, it took me only 2 attempts this fight. The first time was to see what worked, what are his resistances, what are his immunities, what are his attacks. So just needed to see that. He is immune and resistant to a ridiculous amount of statuses. So that's what I found out. But in the second attempt, I saw like the way forward, and that's also when I got him. Now, you also need a lot of Phoenix Downs at first in this fight. So make sure you have stocked up on those, because a lot of people will get one-shotted at the start of the fight if you don't have Protect. So make sure you have those in stock. And also some remedies might be necessary for the confusion and the provoke, but other than that, the challenges are not that many. Now, my final thoughts on this fight: I expected actually a little more after the Seymour fight that we had before, so it actually wasn't that hard to kill Wendigo. So I saw a strategy quite quickly, using magic and eliminating the Guado as soon as possible. However, it was a fun fight, but I quickly saw the way to go, as it seems. Now, if I would give some tips for this fight, I would say use magic, don't bother with physical attacks, use magic, and also get Protect on everyone. Everyone needs to stay protected, so that's what you should do. In the end, I will give this fight 2 stars. It was a little bit harder than the original game. In the original game, Wendigo was actually a little bit of a pushover, but in this mod he gets the stats he deserves, let's say. But I could actually quite easily overcome these new challenges. Even the lag attack or the senseless attack was not all that devastating to deal with. So I adjusted myself accordingly, and I quickly punched my way through Wendigo. So 2 stars. Now, this next enemy is not actually a boss, but it definitely felt like one. So let's call it a mini-boss, or a set of mini-bosses, actually. They definitely deserve a place in this review because they actually destroyed me. And I'm actually talking about the Sandragora on Bikanal Island. Now, they are near the end of the Cenubia Desert you need to traverse on your way to home. And they are essentially in these kind of sand pits where you need to fight them. So there are actually 3 battles. 2 are actually optional because they only hold a chest that you can grab, which contains either a mega elixir or ethers. The last one is actually mandatory. You need to beat at least one of the Sandragoras to reach home. Now, these Sandragoras have definitely been bumped in difficulty. So their HP has gone up, I think, by 50%. So almost to 20,000 HP. Their strength has had a bump. They have a much higher defense, so they take a lot less physical damage. They have a higher agility, so they have many more turns in the CTB. And their luck has also increased ever so slightly. In terms of resistances, their poison resistance has increased from 25 to 40%. And they take 8% poison damage, which is actually not that bad. Next to that, they are also resistant against gravity attacks like Demi. Now looking at their immunities, they were already immune to slow, power break, silence, provoke and zombie. So these they already had in the original game. But additionally, they're now also immune to death and yes, also against petrification, so you cannot petrify them. They're also immune to sleep, but they already had 80% resistance, but now they're flat immune. They're also flat immune to armor break or mental break. And they're immune to doom. They absorb items like grenades and stuff, and they're proof to holy magic. Now let's check out their move stat. Now they will always have first strike. So unless you have first strike too, they will always act first. Now I'm not 100% sure how the first strike mechanic works. I thought it was like having a preemptive strike, so you can always go like first, but they have first strike, so watch out for that because they will probably have the first move. They will also counter any attack. They will counter any physical attack with their kind of bomb, seed bomb that they will throw at you. Now their regular attack is a seed burst. Now it has been tweaked significantly in this mod because seed burst will now be seen as a magical attack. So you will need to protect from this using a magic defense. So a cheers won't work to mitigate the damage, only focuses will work in that regard. It also cannot miss. It is impossible for that attack to miss, so it will always hit your party. And to add to that, it will hit twice. So the animation will start, it will start hitting you with the seed burst, you will see the damage popping up, and then after some kind of small delay, the second damage will also come. So it will hit your party or your party member, it's only on one character, 2 times. And if that's not even enough, it carries 100% a chance of having zombie and confuse. So you are 100% zombied or confused unless you have some kind of protection on, but like Rune Veil for example, but that's just the way it is. And to even top that off with a cherry, it carries also an 80% chance of your character being poisoned. So these guys are not to laugh about. What the hell is this thing? It is a brutal enemy. Okay, but let's look at my strategy. What did I do to beat these monstrosities from hell? Now, the main thing for damage is, once again, our MVP, Lulu. You need to use Lulu to do the fire damage because it's still vulnerable to fire. And don't forget that its magic defense hasn't been bumped, so it still rests at a nice and cozy 1. There are also no counters for magical attacks. There are for physical, but not for magical. So if you do magical attacks, you will not get countered by the Sandragora. You could also apply focuses, but I didn't because you can die at any time. Having the zombie status, having the confused status, along with the poison status, you're going to die actually very often. So I didn't use any focuses because the chances were high she would lose them anyway. And every time I had an opportune moment, I would even haste Lulu just to get a little bit more damage in there. Now there is no way to avoid the seed burst, so you need to get ready for it. So you need to decide whether at that point, when the seed burst happens on your character and they're zombied, confused and or poisoned, you need to decide if you're going to let them die or if you're going to use a remedy. A very, very precious resource, that remedy. I don't think you will have that many at that point unless you farm for them, but they're very precious at this time. So just check if it's when their turn is coming in the CTB, are they poisoned or not? Because you can use poison resistances or armor with poison, what's it called? Not poison proof, but poison ward to protect you from the poison. It will help. It will help, that poison resistance. And then sometimes you just need to take a chance. If they hit themselves in the confusion, then good, they're awake. Sometimes that solves it immediately, but at other times you just need to consider whether it is time to hit them, let them take damage and get them out of confusion, or if it's just time to let them go and just let them die. Now, if you have only 2 characters alive, that's when you're in the danger zone, because if then a seed burst hits one of those two characters and they're confused, then you're in very, very big trouble. Now, like I said before, Poison Ward really helps to avoid the poison, because when they're confused and poisoned, they will just, confuse themselves to death. Sometimes they can just ride out the confusion and they're lucky, but at other times, it just won't happen. And if you have zombie or confuse protection, definitely use it. Now, I also hasted Riku just for item spamming. She is also a very fast character using items, or just the usability, has also a very fast rank in the CTB order, so even hasting Lulu additionally will also help in just spamming those items when people need them. Fire Strike weapons will also help if you decide to do physical attack now and then. Give them fire weapons. Now you also saw that the Sandragora has poison resistance, so it has 40% poison resistance, but even with a poison touch weapon, you will only strike or hit them with the poison 1 out of 10 times, so it's very difficult for it to hit. But it could be a valid strategy, but I actually didn't bother because it just wouldn't happen. Now, something you shouldn't underestimate is to track its HP, to either do a sensor or a scan, or just use the sensor ability on a weapon just to track its HP and very carefully calculate which attacks you need to do to kill it off. Now, you also might use overdrives if you really need to, but I tended to save them a little bit more. I'm sometimes an overdrive hoarder, so you don't need to take my word for it, but if you need to use overdrives, just do it. But you could also think about saving them for the upcoming fight against Evrae or in home itself. Now, the challenges I faced in this fight were actually many. How do I start with this? So just imagine you have traversed almost the entirety of Bikanel Island, so you're kind of low on resources, low on HP, MP, stuff like that. So you could go back to the save sphere, save up, and then go back. That's something I didn't do. Or you could think about first fleeing and escaping the Sandragora fights, which I did. I think the first time I think I fled 2 times, just because I started off very, very poorly. But yeah, that's already one factor. You're near the end, you're close to home, you're low on resources, low on HP maybe, and then you need to fight these things potentially 3 times. That's very, very brutal. Now, the confusion combined with the zombie and the poison is so lethal. It's such a lethal combination. And keep in mind, you have no Yuna for Asuna. So Yuna is not there. You cannot use Asuna or Cure or Cura. It is not available at that time. Additionally, hitting another character just to get them out of the confusion is a dangerous tactic because it might miss, actually. So if you want 100% certainty to get them out of confusion, you need to use a remedy, but these remedies are very precious, so you actually have to consider not letting that character die, because it might not be a right time to use a remedy, or you might waste it because they will get seed bursted the next turn, so it's a very, very difficult to decide what to do with a character that has the confusion, poison, and zombie status. And I need to say I used a lot of remedies in those fights. I think in total they killed me 3 times over the 3 battles I did. I did all 3 of them because I did the optional ones first without ever realizing I needed to do still the mandatory ones. So that was a brutal set of fights. And I also did stupid things like using an Albet potion while one of the characters was zombied. So yeah, I had a tough time. I want to say I had bad RNG as well. But that's just an excuse for getting killed a lot. But yeah, the confusion in that fight is really, really dangerous. And I also needed to be careful not to waste all my Phoenix Downs as well, next to all my remedies, because yeah, characters died many, many times in those fights. Okay, now my final thoughts on these fights. I had to say they were quite frustrating because I had no idea what to do. Now, I knew what to do. If I had, for example, unlimited amount of remedies and Phoenix Downs, then these fights would be okay. You just use the remedy, the Phoenix Down, and you're fine. But because there's no way to avoid the seed burst, you need to use those precious resources for which you do not have that many. So you can only spam Phoenix Downs and remedies at that time, so there's no other way to get through this to win these fights, actually. So you need to go in, have enough Phoenix Downs and have enough remedies and pray for some good RNG, then these fights will be a lot easier. Now, if I do want to give some tips on these fights, I just would say stock up on remedies, because yeah, the Sandragoras themselves, you can steal it from them, so you can go in, steal a few, flee, and then repeat the process. That is, even if you have the flee ability. I had it on Kimari because I followed Tidus's track and needed to use a level 2 key sphere, but next to that, you can steal them from the Sandragoras themselves. Also try to have steal enough Phoenix Downs. I think the birds, the small birds, you can steal it from them, and maybe farm some Phoenix Downs from them. That's how I would do it if I needed to do this again. And also some Poison Ward armor definitely goes a long way, just to not get even poisoned additionally to the Confuse and the Zombie. Eventually I will still give this fight actually 3 stars. It was a very unexpectedly hard fight. It caught me completely by surprise. I died actually 3 times, and I had to defeat 3 of those in a row. It was actually a little bit frustrating in the end that I had to do these. But if you have enough resources, actually it should be okay in the end. But trying to conserve those resources a little bit, not using them all, made this fight actually very, very hard. But luckily, eventually, I destroyed those weeds and buried them deep in the desert sand, so 3 stars. Okay, next up on our list is Evrae. So when you obtain the airship and are headed to Bevel to find Yuna, you meet Evrae, the Guardian Worm, Great Sacred Beast, Protector of Bevel. An iconic boss battle, in my opinion. But our boy Evrae has been bumped in stats. You can see that he has significantly more HP now. He has definitely a much higher strength. His defense has gone up from 1 to 40, so physical attacks will do much less damage than you'd think. His magic is just bumped a little bit just to get this little higher edge when doing magic attacks. His agility has gone up, so he's that much faster. And of course, some extra luck for those extra crits. Now what I will show you first is what resistances and immunities he already had in the original game, or at least the relevant ones in my opinion. So he already was 50% resistance to darkness and slow. So that's what he already had. He was also resistant to all elements, so fire, lightning, water, and ice will do half damage. He was already immune to all the breaks except Power Break, and he was already immune to poison, petrification, threaten, and provoke. So these things, these resistances and immunities, Evrae already had. Now, what did Pbirdman add to this? Is that he now is immune to Power Break. So he added only that. He only added the immunity to Power Break, and you will see why, because that's a big deal. Next to that, he's also immune to Scan and Sensor, and also takes only half damage from gravity stuff like Demi, and also he has item wards, so things like grenades and stuff will only do half damage. Now when we look at this move set, he has 2 different ones. So he has a move set where you fight him up close, but then he also has a move set, or actually one move, but I'll get to that, when you fight him from afar. So when you move the airship back using Sid, he will do different attacks. Now when you fight him up close, he will cycle through a specific set of 4 moves. Now I thought it actually didn't cycle, but yeah. You'll see why I was confused, but he actually cycles through 4 attacks. Now, the first attack he will do is a regular attack or a critical strike. The regular attack has very high accuracy and carries an 80% chance of silence and a 50% chance of darkness. Now, the critical strike is actually an auto crit. An auto crit that will not miss and will 100% shatter the character if they are petrified. Now this is the first move, so he does either attack or critical strike, and also actually the second move in the cycle, he will also do either an attack or a critical strike. Now, when he does this critical strike is not really clear to me. It says in the readme there is some specific counter that is used to when it will use critical strike instead of a regular attack, but I'm not sure how it works. The only thing I know from the original game is that the Stone Gaze has a counter and that certain attacks counts up to that counter, and when it reaches a certain number it will use Stone Gaze, and so maybe Pbirdman used this counter for critical strike instead of the Stone Gaze, but I'm not really sure. If you know, please let me know. Let me know in the comments if you know anything about this critical strike counter. The third move he will use in this cycle is Stone Gaze, and that will slow and petrify your character with 100% chance. Now, if you have some kind of resistances to it, that will of course decrease, but in the readme it says 100%. Now, I don't know if it's really true because I saw it miss Waka at one point, and I don't really know why it would miss when Waka has actually 0 resistance to it, but that's what it says in the readme, so let's go with that. However, the petrification might miss, but if the petrification fails, then they will always be slowed without any resistance, without any protection. If the petrification misses, they will be slowed definitely. Now, the fourth and last move in this cycle that Evrae does is Poison Breath, and this is also the most devastating move because it's an AoE. It's on every character in the front line, and it will 100% poison everyone. If they don't have any resistances, the poison will definitely hit, and it will also have a 30% chance to shatter your character if they're petrified. Now, the poison was already 100% in the original game, but the shatter is a nice added bonus. And you'll also see that in the original game it would like do this cry, this yell before it would use its poison breath, but this is not the case anymore. No. It's attack, petrification using the Stone Gaze, and then the poison breath, and then everything starts from the attack once again. Now, something maybe special to add, but I think this was also the case in the original game. At a certain point, at actually 14,000 HP, he will cast haste on himself. And you need to be careful because if you try to take away the haste by dispelling or by casting slow, he will just haste himself again. So when the haste is on, it stays on. Now, when you fight him from afar, so when you move away the airship, he will only actually do one move, and that is Photon Spray. Now, this Photon Spray will hit your party actually 8 times, and each hit carries a certain chance of inflicting Power Break, Berserk, Sleep, Darkness, and the Sleep and the Darkness lasts infinitely. And it could also have a 10% chance of just killing you outright or petrifying you. So actually, fighting Evrae from afar is next to impossible unless you can protect against all those statuses. Now, lastly, he also does status drops. Now, when he does a critical strike, your amount of turns with protect is reduced by 3. It says also in the readme when he does a swooping attack or a scythe, but that is something that he does from afar, and I only saw him doing Photon Spray. Actually, maybe he does it further down in the fight, but I haven't seen him doing it. But if he does that, the amount of turns you have protect on will be reduced by 1. Okay, now looking at the strategy I tried fighting him from afar once, and I got completely destroyed by Photon Spray, so I wouldn't recommend it. Just stay up close and personal, and you'll be fine. Now, there are actually 2 phases to this fight, and that changes at the 14,000 HP mark when he casts haste. Now, just to be clear, I didn't know at that time that at 14,000 HP that he would cast haste. So the first stage of this fight is actually a little bit the easier part of this fight. So it's still susceptible to slow. So although it has 50% resistance, it actually hits relatively often, at least in my case. So maybe I got a little bit lucky, but I actually got the slow off more often than not. Slow touch weapons I think will not work because the 50% resistance will just negate the 50% chance. Now I also hasted Riku or Tidus as much as I could. You need to spam those items, those Phoenix Downs when someone has been killed, or use Albat potions to get rid of the statuses or the petrification, or just to get everyone's HP back up. And yeah, Albat potions also cure silence, of course. Yeah, so you also need to overcome the slow from the stone gaze if they're not petrified, so casting haste on that character will also bring them back again. And actually in the end you do get a lot of turns in this phase. If some people are hasted, then you do get a lot of turns, and especially if Evrae gets slowed. And you can even maybe haste Auron and Kimahri just to get some extra damage in. So like I said, physical damage is the way to go using Auron, Kimahri and Tidus. Just go all out on Evrae. You should do like 1,000 damage each time you make a hit. You can even do a Dark Buster with Waka just to make it try not hit you with an attack. Yeah, the critical strike will always hit, but just missing that attack could be very helpful. The Poison Spray attack is the most dangerous one. It has high damage and it inflicts poison, so try to use those Albat potions to get your HP back up, and I think you can use Shell or a high magic defense just to mitigate that damage. Additionally, try to use soft armor, because just having a reduced chance to be petrified will help a lot in this fight. And the Stone Gaze, I actually found that it misses also quite often. It did definitely not hit 100% of the time. Finally, Protect also helps in this fight. I don't know if it helps against Poison Spray, but it does help for the physical attacks, because its attacks hit quite hard. Definitely that critical strike. Anyone will get one-shotted by that attack. Auron might survive with his high HP, but it definitely hits very, very hard. Now, when you go to the second stage of this fight, so when Evrae casts haste on himself, then this fight goes into overdrive. It is a completely different phase of that fight. So the comfort of slowing Evrae and you being hasted and having a lot of turns is switched out for absolute chaos. Now his haste, the casting of his haste is a free turn, so he will just cast it in between and he will rehaste himself when he doesn't have it anymore. So don't bother using slow, it will just haste himself again. Now he will get a lot of turns and you will only barely get 2 or 3 turns in between his moves. So you need to recuperate from the statuses very quickly. So if you're poisoned or you have darkness, you need to recuperate very fast and meanwhile do damage. Now, hasting yourself is very important here to just get enough turns in to be able to do that. Now, the damage output will be much, much less because you need to select the moments where you can do damage very cautiously, because if Evrae gets back-to-back turns and gets enough turns in and you have some bad RNG, it can go south very, very quickly. And like I've said before in the past, make sure everyone stays very, very healthy before you even think about doing an attack. What will help you are Albat potions. They heal everyone, and I also had Alchemy with Riku. I don't know if that was a lucky drop, but it helped me tremendously. So the Alchemy doubles your potency of healing items, and that definitely helps, especially with something like an Albat potion. In the end, an overdrive with Riku, which you could have saved, like Super Mighty Guard, will help for everything. It heals you from the regen, it protects you from the physical damage, it protects you from the shell, from the magical damage with Shell. It gives you haste, so it gives you more turns, but on the other side, when you die, you lose all these buffs. So, but the Super Mighty Guard definitely can help when the haste phase starts. Now, in the end, how I did it is I just did damage in that phase when I could. I used those moments out carefully and I just went for it. And eventually I did enough damage, because you still do a quite high damage, above 1000 each time. So when you can get enough hits in just to finish it off. And I also had a lot of items to my disposal, so in the end for me, it was definitely manageable. Now, what are the challenges here in this fight? It has a lot of resistances and immunities, just like Wendigo. But the first stage is actually very easy. There's not really a challenge there. You just need to mitigate statuses and heal, and you just need to start doing a lot of damage and maybe already prep a little bit for that haste stage that you definitely have enough buffs up. Because that's when the real challenge starts. It's very difficult to get damage in. Evrae does high damage with his physical attacks. He does high damage with his poison spray on all characters, and on top of that, he might even eliminate someone from the fight with his stone gaze by petrifying them. So you need to actually endure all this, and you need to survive this a little bit like in the crawler fight. Just endure this damage, get yourself back to your feet, and try to do as much damage as you possibly can, because you have no idea when it will be over. Being from afar is not an option because the photon spray hits too hard. If you want to challenge yourself, go for it, but I wouldn't recommend it. I only needed actually 2 attempts to beat Evrae in the end. I died once from the photon spray barrage he did when I tried to fight him from afar. But in the end, I didn't do that. I went up close and I got him on the second try eventually. Now, what caught me off guard in the beginning was it used to have like this tell, so it did this kind of move. It screamed before it did the poison breath. But yeah, he doesn't do that anymore. He just does it, like I said, in the cycle of attacks that he does. Now, the critical strike was also something new for me. So yeah, seeing him do that it just one-shots one of your characters is very surprising. And in the end, the photon spray spamming when you fight him from afar, it is definitely a surprise that I didn't see coming. So, but like I say, it's like Pbirdman said to you, like, you don't fight him from afar, you fight him up close. It's actually, I think, impossible to kill him from afar. Okay, my final thoughts for this fight. I find this fight actually very, very fun, and in some way also a little bit relaxing, because to me Evrae was always a very iconic boss, a very intimidating foe, because I remember the first time I played this game, he kicked my ass each and every time. So Evrae was always a very iconic boss battle in my experience. But in the end, in the modded version, I felt in control, though the second stage was very hard. But I had a very good time. I reminisced a lot. It's a little bit nostalgic for me. And I really had a lot of fun killing this beefed up version of Evrae. And if I would give you any tips for this fight, just learn the attack moves. I just told you the cycle. It will be attack, attack, stone gaze, poison breath, and then he cycles back to attack again. Now, I thought it wasn't cycling, even though it did, so I abandoned the thought that he cycles through attacks, but I went through this fight never knowing what would be the next move, so I'm actually a little bit proud that I went through this, but a little bit disappointed that I didn't catch that cycle. So in short, a big tip: in the first stage, cast slow on him. When it procs, you will have an easy ride to the second stage. And in the second stage, I would recommend actually doing Mighty Guard, and then I think you will be fine in finishing off Evrae. In the end, I will give this fight actually only 2 stars. I wanted to give it more, but the first stage is actually, too easy. Maybe 2.5, but I just cannot give it 3 stars, to be honest. The second stage is much, much harder, but if you just persevere, then you will get there. There are other bosses that I've had a much tougher time with that I also gave 3 stars. It's not as hard as Sin Spawn GUI. It is not as hard as Sinsfin or Crawler, so I will only give him 2 stars. So after dealing with Evrae, the Protector of Bevel, I think he needs to find a new job, but I think he has a chance to redeem himself a little bit later. But for now, 2 stars. Alright, we have arrived in the Via Purifico, where we meet Isaaru, and he decides he doesn't want to let us leave, and he tries to stop us with an Aeon battle. Now, you might not think this is a boss fight, but in my opinion, it actually is. But I don't want to give this fight an honorable mention, but Also, the cutscene before this fight is definitely very interesting to see because many people from the Final Fantasy X community are mentioned there in this part of the mod, and I really enjoyed watching that. Now, just like in the original game, you fight the 3 Aeons, Ifrit, Valefor, and Bahamut in that order, but they're just a little bit beefier when you look at their stats. Now, in short, Ifrit has the same HP, just a little bit more luck. His Zanmato level has also increased. I'm not sure why. It's now the second time I see this, but maybe it has some kind of meaning, but if it has, I don't know about it. And Ifrit also has a status drop. If he attacks, the amount of turns you have protect are reduced by 2. Valefor also has a little bump in his stats. His HP remained the same, however his evasion has gone up significantly, and also his luck stat is a little bit higher, and he has a reduced Zanmato level, but again I'm not really sure why it's in there. Maybe it's used for something else than the actual Zanmato move, but if you know, let me know in the comments. Valefor also has status drops. If he does an attack or a Sonic Wings attack, he will reduce the amount of turns you have protect by 2. If he does his energy ray, he will reduce the amount of turns you have shell by 3. Now the last one is Bahamut. His HP has been bumped just a little bit from 20 to 21,000. He will have reduced strength, but it's decreased for a reason, I think, which I will explain later. His magic stat has gone up just a tiny bit. His magic and his regular and his magic defense has been bumped up from 1 to 25, and he has a little bit of extra luck just to get more crits in on your Aeons. Furthermore, he has Fire, Ice, and Thunder Ward, and he will also counter-attack almost everything. So that's why I think his strength has been decreased. Otherwise, probably the damage from the continuous counterattack will be a little bit too much for this mod. He also has magic counter, so he will counter all magic attacks. So technically he will counter everything, but I found that he doesn't counter one thing, and we'll get to that when I explain what I actually did. Also his Zanmato level is higher, but again, I don't know if that's relevant here. Now just a small reminder for all Aeons that they are immune to every status effect except Doom. Now, what was my strategy to fighting these Aeons? You might think that it's a little bit the same as in the original game and that they're relatively easy, but that's actually not the case. These fights are actually not that easy. Now, Ifrit and Valefor, the first two Aeons, they don't do anything very special, but they do high damage. The Meteor Strike and the Sonic Wings cannot be evaded and can do very high damage. So with some luck you can have good RNG and take as little damage as possible. However, both of them are still very susceptible to black magic. So that's what I did. I summoned Bahamut and I did just a lot of black magic on both Ifrit and Valefor, and they actually went down very easy. Now you need probably a second Aeon to finish it off because Bahamut will not survive Valefor probably, so you'll need a second Aeon to finish off Valefor before you get to Bahamut, and that's where the party really gets started. Now if you think you can easily beat Bahamut with only 4 Aeons left, and you think that's going to be pretty easy, nothing is farther from the truth. And even though he his only move is charging his own overdrive, so after 5 turns he's going to do Mega Flare, that's the same as in the original, and besides that he will only counterattack. Now I saved the Aeons that can heal themselves for last, especially, so Ifrit, Ixion and Shiva I kept to last because I know they can heal themselves with their black magic, of course. Valefor is the one that will die the fastest. Now my plan actually is to just shield the Mega Flare, which actually works quite good, and then use either special abilities or the regular attack and potential overdrives for doing damage. However, the Mega Flare with shield still does about 600 damage, and you can only survive like 3 of those without any healing or taking any other damage. So that's actually quite significant. Now, if you have a Grand Summon available, please save it for Bahamut. In theory, you can survive without an overdrive, but having one at the ready definitely helps your or improves your odds. But even with only just all of that, I still wasn't able to win this fight. I always was on my last Aeon, and I only could get him to like half his HP, maybe a little bit further, but it wasn't possible to win because he would counter every attack, and he magic counters as well, so it's really brutal. These counters also almost never miss, and in the end I just couldn't win because of all of those things combined. Now, what did strike me as odd is that it will counter everything except for one move. He did not counter Ifrit's Meteor Strike. Now, I have no idea why the Meteor Strike is so special from Ifrit, but that is the only attack that he did not counter. If someone knows why, please let me know, because I am very curious. Because actually this Meteor Strike and the fact that Bahamut doesn't counter it actually gives you almost a free 10,000 damage to do to Bahamut. Also keep in mind that any special abilities of your Aeons, like the Meteor Strike or the Heavenly Strike or Arrow Spark, all cost MP, so these moves are also limited when you're fighting Bahamut. They are not infinite, and you also need to save some MP as well, especially for Ifrit, Ixion and Shiva, to be able to heal themselves, to be able to stand in the front line and take the next Mega Flare or counterattack. So in the end I was actually briefly stuck after my second try. I didn't really know what to do, but I came up with a plan actually to teach my Aeons Cheer, Reflex, Aim and Focus. And these actually were the key to victory. Especially Ifrit, Ixion and Shiva have a more chance of survival because of the self-heal, so I tried to give them especially those abilities. I used the Cheer to minimize the counter damage and also increase my own physical damage output. I used Reflex to maximize evading the counterattack, although it's very difficult to evade. And of course the Focus is important to minimize the Mega Flare damage. And that actually worked like a charm, and like I said, was the key to victory in the end. Now, in terms of challenges that I faced here, so the first two Aeons are not that difficult. However, the Sonic Wings hit quite hard, and Bahamut, my Bahamut actually gets killed quite quickly by Veilfor. Now, Izaru's Bahamut counterattacks really hit hard, and the Mega Flare is also a high enough damage, even with shield, that it's definitely a significant drop from your HP pool. Also challenging is that our own Aeon's special moves take MP, so you have limited healing and also a limited amount of special moves itself. Even the Cheers, the Focuses and the Reflects use MP. So use it wisely. So eventually I needed 3 attempts to win this fight, especially because of Bahamut, and also because I'm stupid, because in my first try I wanted to save Bahamut for last, but it's only by the end I realized I cannot summon him when Isaaru summons Bahamut, so that was just stupid. The second time I just couldn't make it because of the counterattacks, the Mega Flare. It all adds up and it slowly kills all of my Aeons one by one. So the third attempt I had the Cheer, Focus, Reflex and Aim abilities on my Aeons, and these were actually the key to buffing myself up, mitigating the Mega Flare damage and the physical counter damage to be able to get that win. Now, in the end, I'm actually quite surprised that without those extra abilities, this fight was much harder than when it actually seemed so winnable in the beginning. But yeah, that's the Pbirdman mod for you. Okay, my final thoughts on this fight. It was actually a very fun boss fight. In the original game, this fight is kind of meh. We need to get through this, but here it's actually a proper challenge and actually very enjoyable. It makes you think about a tactic instead of just summoning an Aeon and just spamming damage, bulldozering through. It's a very big contrast with the original game. And additionally, shoutouts in the dialogue to the Final Fantasy X community was a very nice touch. Now, if I would have to give any tips, just use Black Magic on the first 2 Aeons with Bahamut. It will be very fast. Teach your Aeons, or some of your Aeons, Cheer, Reflex and Focus at least. And also use that Meteor Strike, because it doesn't get countered. In the end, I'll give this fight only 2 stars. So the first 2 Aeons were not that hard. Bahamut was much more challenging. You needed to actually teach your Aeons new abilities in order to overcome this fight. And in the end, I was able to banish Isaru's Aeons and escape the Via Purifico. And you're probably thinking, why are you giving it the same amount of stars as Evrae? Because Evrae did seem like a more difficult fight, and I'm gonna say, yes, intrinsically, Evrae was a harder boss battle, but Evrae was already hard in the original game. This Aeon fight is actually not that hard in the original game, but now it actually is. So that's why I think, and I believe actually, it deserves the same rating as Evrae. So 2 stars. Okay, last but not least is Evrae Altana. So we meet this boss again in the underwater section of the Via Purifico. So it's actually a revived or an undead version actually of Evrae. And don't forget that in this fight you only have Tidus, Waka and Riku in the front line. So when we take a look at Evrae Altana's stat block, we see that he has a bump in his HP, so it's a little higher. Also some extra strength and magic is added to that. Also definitely a significant increase in defense and magic defense, and just a tad bit of luck. When looking at its resistances, we see that he has a little bit more power and magic break resistance compared to the original game. Also his armor and mental break resistance has gone up from 0 to 25%. However, you can only do these abilities with a Riku overdrive because of course Oren is not with the party. And additionally, he has more darkness and slow resistant. It has been bumped from 50 to 75. When checking its immunities, it now has item proof, so that means grenades won't work. However, items that do elemental damage do work, like Arctic Winds. Those do still work. It is also immune to percentage-based damage, like Demi from a spell or from a Shadow Gem. These damages will not happen because it is flat-out immune. It's also immune to zombie, weirdly, because yeah, we all know in the original game, Evrae Altana has the automatic status of being zombied, but here it's actually immune to being zombied. It's also immune to sensor and scan, and maybe adding the immunities from the original game that it already had. It was already immune to poison, silence, sleep, petrification, and provoke. Now, some special changes as well that I want to clarify. Like I said before, it is not automatically zombied, so the little trick with 2 Phoenix Downs will not work here, unfortunately. Also, additionally, the Stone Gaze move now ignores the number of characters in the front line. Now, I think in the original game, it will check if you have 3 characters, then it might do Stone Gaze. And if you have less than 3 characters, it just won't do Stone Gaze anymore, so you would net up with 0 characters. Now, on contrary to what's written here, I felt that it did stop after 1 character. Maybe I was just lucky, but I don't think that's such an RNG doesn't exist, because after 1 character was petrified, Evrae Altana just stopped using Stone Gaze. So I think there's a bug in there, I don't know, but it definitely, that is not the case. Additionally, when he does its Stone Gaze, it only has a 55% chance of putting Petrify or Sleep on your character for 2 turns. Now, maybe in the original game it was higher, I actually don't know, but in this particular fight it's only 55%, and I think it has to do with the fact that the move should ignore the number of characters in your front line. But again, like I said, I felt that this was not the case. It stopped using Stone Gaze after even 1 character was petrified. Okay, so what did I do to overcome Evrae Altana? I need to say I did try the Phoenix Down trick and it did not work, I can confirm that. I actually did this fight, to be honest, twice. Now, once I did the fight like running away using the gates, because I thought maybe Pbirdman modified the fight so that you need to use the gates, but that was a bit presumptuous of me, because while you use the gates, you lose actually a lot of some good items that you can get in the hallway. but I would recommend not to use the gates. You can definitely fight him just staying put, but I actually did it once running away, and then eventually you will fight him from behind a gate, and that means that he cannot do any physical attacks on you anymore. However, that is the boring part of the fight. With only your characters behind the gate, he can only do photon spray or stone gaze. And then, yeah, it's just a matter of healing yourself, attacking with Waka, healing yourself, etc., until the fight is over. And that's kind of boring. So I would recommend just fighting him up close. From the beginning, just stand your ground. It's a little bit more difficult because he does counterattack, but it is definitely doable. So I actually did the fight again. I stood my ground, and it's much more interesting. You get some good items in the end. So there is a prism ball you can pick up that replaces the invade and counter weapon for Waka. But you get a prism ball instead with magic counter, which is definitely helpful against Seymour Natus later on. Now, what makes fighting him up close a little bit more interesting and more difficult is that the stone gaze will come and claim it will neutralize a character full stop. So what you need to do is actually go full assault. You need to go like a bulldozer over Evrae Altana, because that stone gaze can proc at any time. So like I said, it can miss, but it can, if it hits, it will just eliminate a character and it's immediately over. Now, dark touch or slow touch weapons will not work because his resistance to it is higher than 50%. I used Tidus to cast Haste and Cheer. The Cheers really do make a difference, so please use them. And also Haste, so that you get enough turns in to get those hastes on your party. Maybe just a side note that I have really underappreciated these abilities like Cheer and Focus, etc. For too long, so they do get an honorable mention in this video. This mod makes me see how useful they are and how useful they can be in the fight, so just do it, just use them. Now, Waka can also start doing attacks, and definitely with the Cheers on, he can definitely do some good damage. And yeah, try out the Darkness, because yeah, why not? Why not try it to get Evrae Altana darkened? Also try to use a weapon with a lot of strength bonuses for Waka, because yeah, statuses won't do that much here. Evrae Altana's counter attacks hit very, very hard, but they do miss quite often. And even without Darkness, they can actually miss quite regularly. Slow can work, but it's very difficult to make it connect with Evrae Altana, much more compared to the Evrae battle. The slow doesn't hit that often, in my opinion. So it's not really reliable in a fight where damage really needs to go fast. Use Riku to heal your party, use the Albet potions, and with the alchemy bonus, if you have alchemy on your weapon, it's even better. Just go full on attack, bulldoze over Evrae Altana, and one of your characters will get petrified. The chances are high that it will happen. Now, I must say that in my second attempt, I was so lucky with RNG that none of my characters were petrified. So I got lucky there, but if you want that to happen, you really need to bulldoze your way over Evrae Altana with a lot of damage. And just hope also that it's not Riku that gets petrified, otherwise this fight will take actually a lot longer. Now, the challenges that I faced in this fight are actually not that many. This was actually not that difficult than I would have initially thought. I also got it the first try using the gates, where I swam away using the gates. But also the fight where I stood my ground, I also did it in one go. I expected it not to be zombied anymore, so no surprises there. So it actually felt very much like the original game. And the README says that it ignores the number of characters in the front line. The stone gaze ignores the characters in the front line, but I have experienced in both fights, and yeah, during both fights, that it just stopped using stone gaze when one character was eliminated from the battle. So technically, it's actually easier than the one in the vanilla game, except for the small increase in stats, of course. Okay, so in the end, it was a fun fight, but only because I am used to doing the Phoenix down trick. I am not used to actually fighting it in the original game. So that's why it was fun, because I actually now need to pull up my sleeves and actually fight this thing. And it's very fun to do if you haven't done it in a while. But in the end, it still feels very much like the boss from the original game. And if I would give you any tips, it's just you stand your ground, don't use the gates, use a dark buster now and then just to make it have darkness so it misses his attacks, and just go full assault using cheers, haste here and there, and you will get it easily. So I will give Evrae Altana just 1 star. It felt very much like the original game version. It's actually a less difficult version of the original Evrae, and yeah, his little higher stats are definitely manageable. And so after I granted Evrae Altana his second death, his protecting days are finally over, so 1 star. And that concludes the list of bosses for this episode. We've done some epic fights and seen some iconic bosses for the Final Fantasy X storyline. Especially Evrae is a major milestone for me, because back in 2000 I had so much trouble with this boss. In general, I have to say that the difficulty took like a downbeat in terms of how challenging it was. I must have learned a lot during the previous boss fights. Cell 5. Only a 3-star fight, and that was actually a regular enemy eventually. So I did learn some new things actually. So regular enemies can still be very, very dangerous. The Sandragoras really kicked my butt. And secondly, what I thought is that I really appreciate the value of cheer, focus, aim, and reflex. These abilities have become cornerstones in this mod to overcoming fights, or just giving you that edge to take the victory. Now, if you want to see me take on these bosses in real time, just check out the commentary playthrough playlist linked in the description. I've also included direct links to each winning attempt for every boss. Now, I know things are only going to get more tough from here on out, and I'm looking forward to diving deeper into these intense boss fights, because I really enjoy analyzing their modded attacks, patterns, and stats, and everything surrounding them. Now, up next is Seymour Natus, and if the first Seymour battle has taught me anything, it's that we're in for a wild ride. So I hope you'll all be there for it. And that's a wrap for now. So I'm not claiming to be a Final Fantasy X expert, but I genuinely love playing it, and I wanted to share my thoughts on battling the Pbirdman modded storyline bosses. Now, hopefully you found this either helpful or entertaining, and I'm excited to keep this series going as I take down more of these epic foes. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like, subscribe, drop a comment, especially if you think I missed something or if you want to add something to this list. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!